SREC, as in solar, and then REC are renewable energy certificates.
Yeah.
So there's a few different kinds of RECs or renewable energy certificates. There are wind RECs, and there are solar, and there are actually RECs dedicated to different renewable energy sources. But what's cool is that really governments and municipalities all over the world are starting to create policies that mandate a certain percentage of energy has to be produced from certain renewable energy standards. And what's unique about DC is that they have the most aggressive policy in the country right now when it comes to these RECs. But the most important thing to know about that is they're tied to whatever the fine structure that they've created to hold the utility companies accountable for those renewable energy targets. So some areas will have targets and say we want to get to this percentage, but they don't really have hard policy that has like essentially repercussions in place if they don't hit those targets. But a lot of places are creating what are called compliance payments, which is a fine that the utility company, or in some cases, it's even different like private companies that use a lot of energy, they'll have to pay this fine if they don't get the percentage of the energy in that year from whatever renewable energy source is required. So what's interesting is that DC has the highest fine in the country like this. And it's also pretty hard for DC to get enough solar to hit those targets. And actually, right now, which is actually really good from the policy that they initially created, we are currently a little oversupplied. So, as a response to this, legislation which created these really high fines, and then as a response created really valuable solar renewable energy certificates, it did what it was supposed to do, and it incentivized a lot of people to go solar. And actually, we are just slightly above the target that we were supposed to hit for this year. And so actually city council is in the process of potentially increasing that target by 50% higher. And I think they're voting on December 20th. I've been kind of following along with that. So they're starting to see this worked, and we're actually a little oversupplied. So we're starting to see SRECs actually kind of went down a little bit. They're still very, very high and valuable, but it looks like city council wants to respond and say, okay, we want to up the ante and increase the target a little bit more. So the
And
most
when you say credits, I mean, what does the credit mean?
Mhm.
I mean, I have to go back to basics here.
Right. So some people refer to them as credits or certificates. They're kind of the same thing. It doesn't really matter how you describe them. Technically, they're certificates. Think of it as like a literal certificate that you would get, giving you the credit for like the not credit in that sense, but like you're the one responsible for producing 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. So one solar renewable energy certificate is given to whoever owns the rights to them for a given solar array in DC in this case, whenever it produces 1,000 kilowatt hours. So every time it does 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000, once you hit that mark, you receive one of these certificates each time. And those certificates are able to be sold to Pepco in this case, so that they can use the certificate towards the renewable energy target and thereby offsetting the fine. So essentially, Pepco right now would have to pay a $500 fine for every 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity that they generate that's not from solar, up to the solar percentage. And this year it's 2.6%. So of all the energy they generate, they calculate what is 2.6% of that. Okay, that's 10 million kilowatt hours. So they would have to pay a fine. They'd have to pay $10,500 fines, right, for this year to basically secure that 2.6%. The alternative they have now is, instead of just paying that $500 fine that many times over, is they can buy a solar renewable energy certificate from somebody in DC that has generated solar electricity here for all of this. This is a lot of money. Like, it's a very ambitious policy. It's a high percentage, especially if they increase it by 50% from where it's at. But it ultimately does, in a lot of cases, result in increases to the ratepayers, to everybody who's actually paying their electricity bills. Ultimately, if Pepco incurs this much larger cost, then they, for the most part, pass that on to everybody who's paying their bills. So it is a way that unfortunately does increase prices, but at the same time, it's providing on the back end an opportunity for people to actually go solar for free.